It ain't for running backs for the first 3 weeks. Like they're 10th in most points allowed to the running backs. This is actually a plus matchup. Now it's funny. I'm going to talk about Chase Brown a little bit later in the show, so I'm not going to go too in depth to it. But here's what I am going to say with this. He does have the 12th easiest ranked schedule right now for running backs moving forward from week 4 on. Against the Denver Broncos this week. Okay. But the other thing I want you to focus on is the fantasy football playoffs, where maybe there's an outside chance Joe Burrow comes back if somehow Cincinnati stays competitive. But weeks 13 through 17, they play the Ravens twice. Guess what? The Ravens have allowed the most points to fantasy running backs so far this season. Their defense might not be nearly as good as we thought it was going to be. They play the Bills, who are about middle of the pack. They have the Dolphins, give up the 5th most. They have the Cardinals, give up the 9th most. That's weeks 13 through 17. The most pivotal point in your season, Chase Brown, at the bare minimum, is going to have an RB2 floor based on those matchups. So it's somebody I'd rather hold or maybe even buy low in on. And I'll talk about more about that later, but I just wanted to hit that question now because it's funny. I'm going to take a little bit of a different turn later in the show. You'll see. All right. Let's get to number 3 here. So they want to sit 1, and this is a hell of a group to sit. And I think a lot of people might be facing a very similar type of dilemma. Sit 1 running back out of Javonte Williams, Chuba Hubbard, or Trey Benson, now with the James Conner injury. So this is going to be a common theme, I think, amongst most people. Where do you fall on this, Chase?
Yeah, wow. Honestly, if it was any other week, I might sit Benson just because it'll be his first start there. I think he's going to get a bunch of usage, but I think we have to give him some grace here at the outset of his career as a starter. Now, Seattle is pretty mid against running backs. They're right in the middle of the pack. They're not great against running backs there. And he may cede the passing work down a bit to Amari DiMercato. He may, at least to start. So I think we got to give him some grace. Don't expect gigantic numbers out of Trey Benson, but I think you're starting this week. New England likewise has a very middle of the road defense, like literally middle of the road. They're ranked like 15th across the board on a lot of things. Playing against Chuba Hubbard there. Chuba's offensive line paid better last week. They're not as good as they were hoping they would be, but they played better last week. The nice thing about Chuba is I don't think he's going to game flow out of anything because he stays in on the pass. He stays in on runs. They don't necessarily remove him, situationally. So I'm starting Chuba Hubbard, which means I got to sit Javonte Williams, who actually has been probably the best fantasy back of these 3. But again, he's facing that stupid Packers defense, gives up the 26th most points to running backs. And now you're talking about Dallas having backups at center. They just lost their number 1 draft pick, Tyler Booker, at guard for the week. So they're going to be 2 interior linemen who are out. They were already ranked in the bottom half of the league on offensive line. They were not playing great. Their left tackle has not played up to what they were hoping for him. So you combine that Packers defense with a suspect offensive line and a game where they might have to be passing early. I'm sitting Williams, and it's hard for me to say that, but I'm sitting him.
Yeah, so I'm with you. So Javonte Williams is my RB27 on the week, Chuba Hubbard, my RB15, and Trey Benson, my RB24. So both Hubbard and Benson are RB2s for me this week, while Javonte's more of a flex. You laid it out perfectly. The entire interior of that offensive line is banged up with BB out, Booker out. Like those are big deals for a guy who pounds it up the middle, who needs that running start to really get going, who relies on that power game in Javonte Williams' game there. That's a big deal. And then the Packers are fantastic against the run. They've allowed the 7th least amount of fantasy points to the running back position and 3rd in rushing yards allowed per play. You can't run on them. Quinshon Judkins did have a decent game this past Sunday, but that was against light stacked boxes because the Browns were trying to throw for the most part. Even though it was a neutral game script, they were still trying to throw the ball. So I'm not expecting the Cowboys to have a ton of success on the ground. I also expect, because of the way Dallas' defense has been playing, that they are going to be coming back from behind probably pretty early in this game. And I have to think that the Packers, after a letdown against the Browns, will see their A game against Dallas on Sunday night. So I do think a lot of things kind of come into play there. With the whole Benson of it all, I'm super confident with Benson. He was a complete bell cow after James Conner went out. And remember, it was early third quarter, so we got nearly a half of football to kind of see how this would work. And Benson outsnapped Demercado 21-7. All right, now Demercado is going to get some of the passing game work, and I don't think that's out of Trey Benson not being able to do it, because Trey Benson has been the receiving back with James Conner the first couple of weeks. That's more out of, all right, where do we spell him? Because you have to figure out how to spell him.
Yeah, he's got to take a play off once in a while. He can't do the whole thing.
Yeah, and because he's so much better, I think, than the rest of the depth chart, you might forget to do that every so often when you're supposed to. So I think that's kind of what we're looking at a little bit. So I expect Benson to be a pretty good bell cow in this matchup. And he's got to be an RB, a running back too, at the very least. Like, I don't see the difference right now between him and James Conner. James Conner, even before the injury, did not have the explosion, especially, from the handoff, like the quick twitch explosion. He didn't have what he had last season, at least not so far through this year. Maybe it's because his Achilles are getting ready to snap and we just didn't know yet. I don't know. But Trey Benson has looked explosive. He looked like he has progressed since he's been drafted and has gotten that momentum that we've been looking for since he got drafted in his quick twitchness. So I like Trey Benson a lot here heading into this week. And Chuba Hubbard, I know it's been quiet, because the Bryce Young storylines of how good or how terrible he's been, on this drive or that drive, and overall how bad he's been. That's been the storyline. That and Ted McMillan looking as good as he has. That's what people have paid attention to. But Hubbard's just been moseying along, finishing average points as a top 12 running back. Another good matchup here against the Patriots, who are 14th in points allowed. It's not a matchup that scares you in any capacity. So Chuba Hubbard's just one of those guys. I'm going to keep playing as an RB2. I'm going to keep getting that solid production. I'm not benching you ever.